good
Morning.
afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. There's a little hand wave there from my
Yeah.
today's guest, and I'm going to introduce you to my guest. First of all, let me introduce you to who I am. My name is Joy Langley. I'm an emotional intelligence coach, and I'm also a therapist, and I'm based in the UK. That's enough about me for now. Now, my guest, who was just casually drinking a cup of coffee, because it's the morning where
Yep,
Shankar is.
it
Now,
is.
Shankar Poncelet, and I was just teasing him because I thought I knew French, and I was saying Poncelet, and he was laughing. He says, "No, it's Poncelet, Joy, like cabriolet." Or I thought, well, I'll go with it. But Shankar is a very interesting character. I've known Shankar on a personal level for about a year and a half, and I've always found him to be a very unassuming character with lots of layers. He's very quiet on the surface, and you think, oh, he's a very serious character. And as you get to know him more, you find that there's a quite a geeky person behind who's quite funny as well. So that's been a real revelation for me. But Shankar was born in Luxembourg, and he always had this idea of the American dream, which is interesting, isn't it? It's a
Mhm.
worldwide kind of concept, the American dream. But Shankar carried that in his heart all of his life. And eventually he ended up in the USA, in Dallas. Now, the only thing I know about Dallas is the show I used to watch with J.R. Ewing. Who Shot J.R. was the big thing. So those of you who know that, fair enough. Those of you who don't, you're probably too young. But Shankar now lives in Dallas. But how he got from Luxembourg to Dallas is a story in itself and involves a lot to do with bits of luck, but I think also just really intentional behavior. Shankar is now the CEO of Shanks X, SHANKX, a public relations company, but also they serve the healthcare community. So it's a consulting agency and a PR. There's lots here. In between, I must say, and it will come up again, that Shankar worked for the law enforcement office as a law enforcement officer. We call it policeman over here in the UK. And then he worked for the fraud squad. It just goes on and on. So every time I sort of like peel back a layer about Shankar, I am more and more and more and more shocked. Absolutely shocked. And we've got some people that just want to say hello to you, people that you might know. Who shot JR? Thank you so much, Tara. You know where I'm coming from, don't you? Absolutely. And Kelly, good morning,
Good
Kelly.
morning, Kelly.
And also a young lady called Andrea, who, oh, I don't know who this person is, but
Yeah, no
all will be
idea.
revealed later. Absolutely no idea. But yes, Shankar, this is your stage for us to have some fun because you know that I'm not really going to do anything unless it's fun. So I want to kick off with this whole idea of growing up in Luxembourg. Now, it's a very small country in Europe. It may be the size of the UK. I don't know. I wish I knew
Oh,
enough about.
yeah,
Is
much
it
smaller, much smaller.
smaller? Okay, well,
Yeah.
I thought the UK was small, but okay, it's much smaller than the UK. Now, how come somebody who lives in Luxembourg carried in their heart this desire for moving to America? I need to unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, that is a very good question, and one that I very often wonder myself, why was that the case? All I can tell you, this was one of those things in my life that I am blessed with having clarity often. So as a young boy, this is my first memories of realizing that I had this immense attraction that I felt from the United States. As a young boy, I remember unpacking these plastic toy soldiers, and we had the German side and the Americans, and I saw that flag, and something just happened. I felt this attraction without even knowing and understanding what this was about. So I started exploring. I started asking my mother for pictures. I started asking friends and family for vacation videos. And I started feeling this interesting bond between me and this nation. Now, it's really interesting because, as you probably know, Luxembourg was subjected under the Germans during World War II. So the Americans represented our liberators. And I think I grew up within the last generation that was very aware of that, of those dark times. And America was somewhat a hero for all of us. And it definitely also marked very distinctively the culture I grew up with, in that it formed the music we listened to, and also TV and cinema. So that's a little bit of this unexplicable love since the beginning for that country. Now, of course, we're going to that later. I get the chance to go on my vision quest and truly find out whether my ideas were correct or not.
Right. Now, Vision Quest, that's something which I haven't got in my notes, Shankar, but I'm just going to pretend as if I know. Yes, of course, Shankar, your Vision Quest. Right. Okay. So Shankar, now, even that is a really like deep connection that you've made between the USA and Luxembourg, a very small country in Europe. I know that a lot of Americans don't even know that Europe is a place, but no, I won't even say that. That's not true. I'm being cruel. I'm being cruel. I'm being cruel. Of course, you know where Luxembourg and Europe and everywhere is. But Shankar, during your teens, something that I was really taken aback by was you learned to fly a plane,
Yes.
not fly by yourself, of course, fly a plane.
Mhm.
And as the plot thickened, I recognized that you went abroad, I think it was America, to learn, and your mum let you traipse off there every now and then. It just blew my mind. You know, it reminded me of when I read a story about this person in America sending their 5-year-old off to school on the subway. It just blew up as a big story because they thought, how irresponsible, how could you do that? So when I read that story about your mum, I thought, wow, how
Yeah.
did that happen?
Yeah. So that's a very interesting story about my childhood, and also tells a lot about, of course, who my mom is. I was always, as most boys, I was fascinated by aviation. So what happened was that there was the Berlin Air Show in Germany, Berlin, and I went there with a couple of friends, and there was this big air show. And then we saw this plane, a C-54, which is the plane that was used during the Berlin airlift to bring goods and groceries to the Germans who were cut off from the world. So I approached that plane. I was 15 years old, and there was an old pilot sitting underneath the plane, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, you are American, you are a pilot, you're basically my hero. Let's talk." And his name was Jerry Munn, by the way, Gerald L. Munn. And it was so interesting that he would react to that. He would not just brush it off as just yet another boy who came, right? So he said, well, here's the thing. If you really want to become a pilot, you need to find out whether that is truly what you want to do, because you're going to breathe, live, eat in airplanes. You're going to be on your way all the time. So I recommend you get your pilot's license as early as possible. So what happened is we went back to Luxembourg. I told my mother about this old man that I met, this soldier, and that alone must have been already a shock for her, because my mom was not and still is not the person who likes the concept of military, you know, meeting old people who invite you overseas. But we exchanged a few physical letters, and Jerry invited us to another meeting in Frankfurt, and he got to meet my mother. And he said, "Okay, you can come and visit me in the US, and I'll fly you all around the country." So we did that. And as I turned 16, I also got my private pilot's license, because there is a loophole in the law where in Luxembourg you can only start getting your driver's license when you're 18, but because small countries very often copy legislations from the big ones in order to make things easier, and they must have copied it from most likely the United States, where it was possible to start that process at the age of 16, which led to me doing that. So I was very fortunate. My grandparents had money set aside that I was gonna get when I turned 18. It's kind of a thing in Luxembourg, probably everywhere around the world. Grandparents, when they can, they have a little nest egg for their grandchildren. So I was granted access to that money early. That's how I was able to finance it.
You have an amazing amount of stories up your sleeve, Shankar. They never fail to surprise me. And I didn't know the tail end of that one. I didn't know the bit about the birthday money, or the birthday money.
Yeah,
When you're 18, you get given a gift. And that does happen around the world.
yeah.
You're absolutely right. But your mum, and one of the, I think it was Tara in the audience, said she loves your mum. Like, what an amazing thing to do.
Yeah.
And to trust you to go somewhere so far away. And in a world where we can't, well, we feel as though we can't trust people. There's so much fear, I suppose, around. I don't know if I would ever would have let my son traipse off somewhere with some strange person and said, "Oh, by the way, I'll teach you to fly a plane." But Shankar, it could only happen in your life. And there's a lot more to come up. Okay. All right. But I talk about the hero story. So for me, when I read your story, this is another one of those. The hero goes out to find something, and there's someone who turns up who's kind of holds that magical like answer. They're the ones that are going to support you. So that's just incredible. It blows my mind.
Always been lucky with people wanting to support me. Always, always, always. That is really a blessing in life.
But I think if we're looking at how we attract people, you know that my thing really is about emotional intelligence and all that therapy stuff and the theory that I've, gathered over the last 18 years through practicing. I don't think it is just luck, Shankar. I do believe there's an energy between human beings that we feel. And even me and you, even though you're in the USA and I'm over in the UK, once we're on camera, that energy is real. And I don't know how deeply you get into spiritual stuff, but I know that human beings can connect through time and space and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm going down a very deep rabbit hole there, wondering if anyone's still paying attention to me. I've got one person, Andrea. Yeah, she thinks definitely there's something universal going on. There is a thing. So yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Now, of course, Shankar, everyone that's joined me today wants me just to cut to the chase, because tell us about becoming a millionaire, Joy. Like, of course they do. Oh, no, but we're not going to, Shankar. They're just going to have to wait patiently and listen to some of my questions. I'm sorry, guys. In between, I will, of course, drop a little bit of breadcrumbs because I'm kind that way, aren't I? But let's go back, Shankar, to the fact that obviously flying a plane at such a young age, considering yourself to be a lucky person, I love your attitude too. But in terms of then a career, out of all the things you could have chosen to do, Shankar, you joined the law enforcement department.
Yep.
I don't, and when I look at you, and from what I know of you, that's the last job in the whole world I would ever have said you would have done. So how did you fall into that?
Well, it's really a combination of two things. I was raised by a single mother who in many ways represented the opposite of mainstream society. So I always had the feeling that I wanted to go in a direction that was not her. I think we often have that as young individuals, right? That was one thing. The other thing is that at that moment in time, when I graduated high school, I really didn't have any field of study that I wanted to pursue badly enough. And I saw law enforcement as a way to give back to the community that had really treated us very well as a mother with a single child. Luxembourg has a lot of very strong socialistic measures in place. And I felt that it would be a good way to give back and serve. Now, that said, I have also always, like probably a lot of boys, I had this attraction towards the military, towards weapons, towards the strength that represents. So for me, that was a way to live that as well, because my mother would have never accepted me going into the military and becoming a soldier. I think that would have been the only thing where she would have like strongly
It would have
that.
broken her heart, I think. I think most mums would feel that way. But having said that, we do need men and women to join the military because, of course, there are
Yeah.
wars around the world, lots of internal problems, and we do need someone to put their hand up and say, yes, I'll do that. And they're doing it on our behalf. But I hear where your mum's coming from. So going into the law enforcement was the closest thing to, as you said, not necessarily defying your mum, but moving closer to what you wanted as well. And
Yeah,
that,
my masculinity too, right? Because let's not forget, I was raised without a father figure. I mean, I had my grandfather and he was there, but he was not there all the time. So I think that was also a very important part for me defining my personality, was being thrown into that more roughly edged world of law enforcement was very important for me.
of course, and I think a lot of children, a lot of men, let's say, who've been raised by just mums, would understand the need to have more masculine, more male role models around them,
Mm.
because bless our cotton socks, mums, we can bring up children, we can bring up boys, but men are different to women, whether people want to argue with me or not. And some of the characteristics that have to be brought out, only a man can sort of teach you that. So going into a masculine environment was really, really important for you. But it also seems like a really dangerous thing to do, because some of the stories that you have shared with me, away from this particular format, some of the people that you met, I just would not want to meet them on a dark night.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing about emotional intelligence, which is being, very, very conscious of how you are as a human being, how you manage your emotions, labeling them, what you're going to do with it, etc., then what you do with it when you meet other people. I think you must have been highly developed in this whole thing called emotional intelligence, even when it wasn't called that.
I think so too. And I think that was because I had a very good foundation of being told that I'm loved and valued, that I can do everything in life. That was the foundation. And I have to give that to my mother. The other aspect was that, as probably with a lot of boys who are raised by a single mother, they often have to step into roles where they have to be, quote unquote, the man in the house. So that definitely also gave me a lot. And then this contrarian nature that my mom had, and this willingness of me to be part of mainstream society, forced me to very early on see a lot of different perspectives, right? So, and I always tried to bring all of those perspectives into the police work, because something that I understood early on is, if you make people feel understood and respected, you can enforce law in a way where there's no violence. I mean, I don't have to tell you how many possibilities you can open when you approach a difficult situation, even to the point where you arrest someone and take someone to prison. When you approach that with making the person feel understood and respected, that doesn't mean that you endorse and agree with what they did or what they represent, but it means that you see them as a human being and you treat them as such. And that is generally in life a wonderful formula.
It is, Shankar. And like I said, I think that you were either born big or just this very mature attitude that you developed. And again, for me, it's always about working out this conflict, or not conflict, the contrast, let's say, between nature versus nurture. What makes me me? what makes you you. And I think hearing a bit of your background is so important for us to begin to formulate why you've managed to like just keep on climbing and being so determined about where you needed to be, the country you needed to be. And then also once you got there, very determined about forging a career, which, you know, has made you into a millionaire. And I'm like impressed by that. I'm thinking, wow, Shankar is definitely someone that I need to speak to, because people want to know what was the direction, the trajectory of his whole, you know, movement from Luxembourg to the USA to becoming quite a very well-loved CEO as well, because I don't only speak highly of you, other people do, Shankar, but that's enough. We don't want you to get too big-headed now, do we? Okay, yeah. But, you know, this whole emotional intelligence thing was so important for you in the law enforcement. And then you moved, I think, was it kind of like, I don't know if it was like a promotion, but you then got involved with the fraud squad. I mean, these are like vague names that I just sort of remember, Shankar. But yeah, the fraud squad comes to mind.
Yeah. So I was in total about 9 years in the Luxembourg law enforcement, and I was fortunate enough to be what you would call a regular street cop. I was that at the beginning in a very rough environment in a red light district. And then I guess someone realized, hey, this guy has a little bit, this guy has more capabilities with numbers and whatnot. So they invited me into what would be the equivalent of the FBI here in Luxembourg, here in the United States. And I joined the International Financial Fraud Investigation Unit. And you have to know a little bit about Luxembourg to understand the importance of this unit. Luxembourg is very strong in financial services. It's a very strong banking hub for the world. It has a lot of monetary funds that are managed in Luxembourg because it is just so ideally located centrally, but it also has the trilingual capacity. And a lot of big companies are headquartered and harbored in Luxembourg. So what then happens is when people and company owners, CEOs and founders get too greedy, is they leverage structures where you can evade tax or you can launder money. And they often choose countries far away, which was Luxembourg. So what then happens is that investigators from all over the world sent their judges and investigators to Luxembourg. And it was my role to help them find just what the warrant covered, right?
Okay, so you know what? There are lots of tax havens around the world. And the thing with money, okay, is that everybody wants to have it, but we get a bit annoyed when people who have a lot try and like hide bits of what they have. You know, truth is, it does make the world go round, and I suppose you should be able to hold on to your money, but I'm not a tax pot person. I don't make the rules. And there are some rules around where you put your money and how it can be found. That's all we can say. And you were involved in that. But your move then out of the law enforcement into that department was because people realized you were, smart. And this smartness, you're pretty smart. They're thinking like, he can't just be an ordinary street cop. He wants to do, he can do too much. And that's how that happened. And that then led on eventually to you moving to the USA. So if we sort of fast forward, in all of that thinking then, the jobs that you had, did you ever think you were going to have your own company? Was that something that you thought, yeah, I'm going to do that, Joy. One day, that's what I'm going to do. Own my own company, be the CEO of a company, be a millionaire.
No, not at the beginning. I saw myself as a very dedicated servant to the community. And the first thing that I did, of course, was work for the Luxembourg government. Even after my immigration, I first picked up a job until I started being a businessman. So I didn't see that right away.
But once you got to the USA, it all began to materialize. And I know that you are there's a couple of books that you like, and there's one by Robert Kiyosaki. I think I pronounced that properly. The Rich
Yep.
Dad,
Rich Dad, Poor
Rich
Dad.
Dad, Poor
Yep.
Dad. And the brain doesn't always work, Shankar. But there's something in that book which you've always held on to in terms of a work ethic. Could you tell me some more about that?
Yeah, so first of all, it is an amazing book, and I don't know how that happened, but I read it so early in life, and it teaches very valuable lessons. One of the most important one is always invest in assets. The other one that you're probably referring to is if you want to get into a certain position with a certain company, open yourselves up to start wherever the starting point may be. And then show, I like to say in life, everything you do is always a sample of your work and of what you can do. So no matter where you start, smart people within the companies and organizations will see you, and they will bring you where you can be the best asset to the company. And I did that on several occasions. I did it within the Luxembourg law enforcement force. But I also, after my immigration, I mean, interestingly enough, I got a student job as a cashier within a local co-op in the student town, ended up being over the website. I got a student job as the alcohol EDU administrator for the university. I still have the university as a client, ended up being responsible for restructuring the way they use technology to administer the courses. So that is just very valuable lesson that I believe in. Don't be too focused on where you want to get right away, but understand that forces will naturally drive you to where you want to be and where you are good at if you are willing to start wherever the starting point is.
And that's a good lesson in life as well. So I think your attitude has always been spot on right from the start. And it reminded me of just show up as your whole self, and someone in the world will recognize that. You were doing that, which is great. I know other people might be listening and think, well, I keep turning up as my whole self, but people won't let me get the breaks. But life isn't fair, but life is about doing your best at all times. And you're saying that the doors open perhaps when they're ready to open, or you might have to find the right doors, because you didn't necessarily stay in those jobs. You kept progressing. Once you got to the USA, you just kept on progressing. So there's a lot of movement there in terms of like jobs. It sounds as though you got involved in technical things, more like website stuff and IT stuff, but that's a bit of a gray area in my head.
Okay.
I sort of fall asleep with all the software stuff, Shankar. I promise not to fall asleep, okay? So just tell me, how did that all happen? Because this is your strength. This is actually this is how you have made your million.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, really, I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, studied interactive media studies, which was a combination of computer science, software engineering, communication, design, marketing. And I immediately started freelancing on the side. I started building websites right after, and as my capstone project, I was the CEO of a web agency that was run by students and was officially sanctioned by the university. So it was a great program that was very hands-on. After graduation, I worked as a software developer employed for a year with a company based in Cincinnati. And then, as life would want it, I had to move to Chicago and got my first job there just to have one to facilitate the move. Didn't like the environment. And it was at that point where I said, okay, I'm going to 100% rely on my freelancing work. And that was the start of being a businessman. Then it took some time for me to also open up to being a business with team members and grow and keep growing.
Of course, of course. And as you said, you can now just define where the start was. You did the degree in that particular area. Was it IT? Did you say? Or
Interactive media studies.
yeah, I heard the word media, interactive media studies. I'm thinking like I told you, Shankar, I'm not a technical person, and when I sort of hear technical things like SEO, and I just feel myself dozing off. I must pay attention because this is very exciting stuff. This is how you got your start. And really and truly then having to relocate when you needed to, that was something you just did. You job's over there, I have to move to where the job is. And growing, actually, I mean, you growing in yourself, I think you were highly emotionally intelligent to start with, a great understanding of yourself and other people. And a lot of the jobs that you've taken on board, they showed that. And your whole attitude, as you said, way back when you were in law enforcement, seeing the humanity in other people really, really helped you to deal with them, work with them. And they respected the fact that you had a job to do, and you respected the fact that they'd done something wrong, and you're both on the same page. So you kind of use that energy to encourage people to just hold their hands up and go along with things. But you have taken all of those skills into your business, and I would have said that's one of the top skills that anybody needs in terms of like just socializing. But building clients is another ball game, isn't it? Because things go right, things go wrong. Are there more levels to this emotion intelligence thing that you had to pull out of your bag and learn and acquire as skills?
Yeah, to me, the secret to getting clients and keeping them is to always be willing to see things from their perspective. Because business owners get so very frustrated and defensive about their business that it is really hard, and it takes really stepping out of your own perspective to say, yes, I see why you would require that now. I see why you would complain about that invoice. And so that's the one part that really, I believe, was innate in me. The other one was that I always made sure that I identified and truly cared about what it was that my client and their company was doing. Give you an example. I'm a vegan. If an opportunity came my way to build something huge for a slaughterhouse, as a very drastic example, I would definitely not be picking up that job, even if it paid me millions.
So it would have to line up with your values and your beliefs. Yeah. Okay. So and I don't think anybody would doubt that that's who you are. You're not going to break any of your own what you believe in. You're not going to go against that. And I think most human beings would be tempted, because I don't know how much money I'd have to wave under your nose to make you bend. Anyway, if I offered you another million, perhaps would you?
They say we all have a price, and I never want to claim that I am anything better than most people. So I probably have a price too. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm gonna have to like start saving up my pennies for that one, I think. So, but becoming a CEO, that's not how you saw yourself at the beginning. And even in your journey working for, I'm not sure who it was, but there was a lady on the way. I look about, as I said, this whole hero's journey, us meeting people who give us opportunities, teaching us things. There was a lady that said to you that she felt that you weren't going to stay at the level of doing coding, and you were really annoyed with her.
Yeah. It was a man. It was my supervisor at my first job in Cincinnati. Amazing mentor, Matt Brewer. And he told me that. He said, I know you want to be the expert in the trenches, the coder, but with your leadership skills and your ability to understand business, people, and technology, forces will always push you up. You'll see. And he ended up being right. Now, the interesting part about being a leader and a CEO, Joy, is that I have never strived for that in life. I've never really actively sought that out. But wherever I go, I like to be accountable for the things I do. Wherever I go, when I'm involved in something, I want to see it flourish. And guess what happens when people see that? They want you to be in a leadership position. They nominate you to be that. I remember when I joined the local Chamber of Commerce here in San Antonio. By the way, Joy, I'm in San Antonio, Texas, not Dallas. But any city in Texas is amazing, so that's fine. But I joined that chamber, and within 2 years, they had made me chairman. I never strived for that, never sought that, but that's what happens when you are invested like that. It just happens.
I think human beings, this whole thing about human potential, okay, so we're all, I suppose, a bundle of human potential. It depends on whether we get a chance to express that or not. And it also depends on whether we believe that we have it in us as well. You've had a strong sense of belief from being a child. As you said, your mum, you got a lot of good praise and a lot of, good feedback from the adults around you. So I would say that your self-esteem, how you felt about yourself, that was quite high. And
Yeah.
you've continued to take that through. It's kind of I would say, a can-do attitude. Whereas someone who'd perhaps come from a slightly different background, they would perhaps feel that life didn't have much to offer them, or they shouldn't go for things, or they don't deserve it. There's lots of beliefs that we accumulate over time. Your ones are quite positive, and I think that's helped you to just keep pushing forward. But there's also something about your character, I think, Shankar. And like I said, my first encounter with you, I just thought this is a very quiet person, very unassuming, doesn't say much, very quietly spoken. And I dismissed you. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah, no,
Isn't that
that's
terrible?
normal.
But you don't set out to be the life and soul of the party and, "Hey, Joy, here I am. This is who I
No,
am." You don't
no.
have to do that. And I think over time, I've realized that you can just keep your own counsel. You don't have to show off. You don't have to be that loud person in the room. And I am always reminded about making assumptions in life. Do not make assumptions. You know, take people on face value, but always be prepared to find out more about them. So even though we talk about being judgmental and it's a bad thing, and I'm a therapist and you shouldn't be judgmental, guess what? Human beings are always assessing each other,
Yeah,
whether
we
we
have.
like it or not. And it's
Yeah.
a snap decision in that moment, because I think from a survival perspective, certain certain urges that we have, certain instincts that we have, they're instant because they could save our life. But me judging you, Shankar, I apologize. You never knew that. I've never shared that with you.
Oh, I forgave you the moment it happened.
You remember me saying it to you, do you? Do I?
No,
Oh,
it's a principle that I have in life. I like to forgive things right at the moment they happen, because by forgiving, I give myself a bigger gift than I give the other person.
oh, wow. Oh, you're just making me go all weak at the knees. Okay.
Oh,
All right, Shankar, that's good stuff. Nice stuff. So let's move on to some heavier stuff, okay?
all right.
Mantras and beliefs, because as I was reading your biog, I really enjoyed some of the sayings. I think we should have a book or Shankar-isms. Um, one of them was people often talk about, hang on, let's get this straight. You think that people should wake up in the morning and have this desire just to do their job. I think, you should wake up and just be in that excited space. And some people aren't. It sounds as though you've always done that, though.
Yeah, I have allowed myself to do that by always creating circumstances that would let me be that person. But it comes with a price. You have to really be, in a way, ruthless about letting those circumstances be. And a lot of what happens in our lives that are considered and that are probably very normal are circumstances that won't let you be that, Right, but I was very particular about not creating financial anchors, not creating family anchors, not creating anchors in my life, always letting myself in a almost self-centered way be who I want to be. And I am one of the people who belong to the camp that say there is no work-life balance, there's just life. And I want for myself life to be something that I am, if possible, excited about every single day and morning. It matters a lot to me. It matters a lot to me what I do, with whom I am, and where I am. Those three things, me as a human being, I want to be in control of them. And I know that a lot of people are not. And that is the foundation of a lot of problems and unhappiness.
But that's a good set of rules. If everyone that's listening, that's a good set of rules to try and hold on to. Be aware of who you are and be intentional about what you want to do, and try and find ways to achieve it. Even if you just had those three things in your mind, that would be enough. But again, like I said, when I look at nature versus nurture, why are you the way that you are? A lot of your history begins to piece it all together. But I didn't know that you kind of had this kind of loose intention around where am I, physically in life, so that you can move from A to B or B to C or C to D. There are no major anchors that are going to be, holding you down until you're kind of like a free spirit. But when you decide to put your roots down, you do, but then you can become a free spirit again. But it just sounds to me that human beings should be like that. It's about growth. It's about going where your heart takes you, where your intentions take you, where your skills take you. I'm just pleased that you're an example of someone that shows that it's possible, because people need to see that. We read a lot about growth and we think, oh, it's not possible. But here, I want everyone to see that here's someone, Shankar is someone who genuinely does that and is still very, very humble about everything. That's another thing which I can't get over about you. Right. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, Shankar, this whole idea about when you become an employee or become an employer. The saying that you've got here is that inside everybody, you've said, there lives an employee and an employer. And there's a story around this. I'm sure that only you can tell it your way. So and you can say more.
Yeah. I, right at the moment, don't remember the context of what that was, but I think it went back to understanding that when you are the master of your life, the master over what you control, and for some of us, that is not a business. For some of us, that is a household. For some of us, that is a family. For some of us, that is an organization. For some of us, that is something where they volunteer at. When we oversee these elements of our lives, we hopefully think like an employer thinks, which is, who are my assets? Are they efficient? And am I bringing a positive return on investment? Whatever the positive return represents, it's not always money. So in that sense, we are all employers. And of course, employees is someone who says, well, I am willing to place myself under the protective hand of this authority, understanding that what they take onto their shoulders is something that I do not desire. It comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of financial responsibilities, a lot of foresight, a lot of sacrifices that I am choosing not to have those in my life. And that's why I say, in our different roles in our lives, we are carrying the essence of employer versus employee always. And then, of course, since we are evolving human beings, sometimes we transition into being an employer. And I know that sometimes employers transition back into being employees, because it comes with quite a lot of demanding tasks.
And I think this whole like pervading idea that everybody can be a business owner, or everybody can be an entrepreneur, or that everybody wants to be or should be or has to be. I think there is a pressure. It's a bit like watching television, I think, and aspiring to what the celebs are doing. I
Mm.
want to be like that. But the reality of running a business is that it's not easy. And
No.
also, as you said, I love the way you described that people who decide to work for you under that protective umbrella. It'd be lovely if more employers thought about their employees that way. But the protective umbrella, you're responsible for now the livelihoods of
Yeah.
somebody else. It's
Yeah.
almost like having more children to feed, more
It
mouths to
is.
feed.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very much the truth. And I will say that I think that some people who, whether by their own choosing or not, have circumstances that just truly doesn't make it realistic for them to be an employer. Now, we have a very contemporary trend that wants to make us all believe that we can all be our own business people and have companies and whatnot and be employers. But I think that is a little bit misleading. But we also maybe have to talk about, or it's a question about how do you define business and being an employer, right? But that is
Well, let
another.
me put you on the spot because you can answer this one. I know you can, Shankar. So how do you define business?
So
You walk straight into that one.
you have a business when you have an operation that runs without you. In other words, if someone calls your business number and asks for someone else in your company, or when you pick up and say, hello, this is Shankar, they say, who is this? Then you have a business, right?
Right. So you're not necessarily the person that they can reach right away. That's an interesting definition, isn't it?
And I want to add one thing to that thought, because we are in that amazing time where there are lots of one man or one woman businesses. So I will say that it doesn't always have to be another person who is seen as the main thing that drives everything. It can be technology, it can be systems and processes. We are actually now then, never before, we have single person operated businesses that make more and more and more money. But of course, they can only do that because they understand how to leverage technology and systems and processes.
Of course, and there will be a natural limit to how far your business can expand and how much you can do because you only have one pair of hands. Even I, have recently taken on board a VA because I thought I have to allow this person to take over some of the things that I do because it's things that I don't need to do. It's taking up time, and it's
And
working out when you are more valuable than the task is not. Well, let's say the job is, they would say, a $20 job, and actually I'm worth a lot more than that per hour. So it's best if I give it to somebody else. And I had to really grapple with, do I want to take on board that consistent person? But I'm doing okay. So
well, Joy, and I insist that we take a few minutes to also talk about your business. I want you to tell us, how do you actually help people? Do you have workshops? How does that work? Because I know I care a lot about it, because emotional intelligence is so important for business.
And that's very kind of you. That's just the kind of person you are, Shankar. So I will take up 2 minutes of this space, which is entirely about you, and I will say some more about me. So
Okay.
as Shankar rightly said, emotional intelligence is my thing. And I also have therapy skills too, 17 plus years, and I'm mixing them both together, speaking to business owners, because I know that really emotional intelligence, which is the awareness of yourself, awareness of other people, what happens when people get together, right or wrong, bit of a bun fight, arguments. We've got to work out, how do we manage that? As Shankar said earlier on, even with clients, this idea about the client is always right, but it's about understanding somebody else's perspective especially when you're working with them and you want to retain them. So for me, it's getting the business owners to understand how their mind works, how they actually operate, what makes them tick, understand the power of emotions over thoughts and behaviors. Because you can get a crappy email first thing in the morning, it could ruin your morning, couldn't it? Or
Mhm.
you could have, as you said, an invoice that someone is insisting on querying. That could really make you annoyed. How do you deal with it in that moment, and how do you carry on? So for me, it's about you beginning to understand yourself so you can have better relationships. And you're right, Shankar. I do have a workshop coming up. You're insisting that I plug it, so I'm going to go
Yeah,
for it.
please.
I do have a workshop coming up in July the 22nd, and it's called Emotion Intelligence Mastery. It's for only 8 people. So it's an intimate space where we can begin to iron out some of this stuff, and you can walk away after 3 hours with a lot more knowledge about who you are and some techniques, some strategies, some frameworks to apply easily, because everything that I do is fun, Shankar. You know me. I
And how
only
do
have
we
fun.
sign up for that workshop, Joy?
What's that?
How do we sign up for that workshop?
Oh, Shankar, someone put you up to this, didn't they? How do you sign up for it? Well,
I don't know.
for the moment, guys, just DM me. That's the best way. I'm putting a sales page up because it's just early days, but there will be a sales page up, and you can just hit a button and join. But for now,
Awesome.
contact me, DM me, and you can find out more. And since Shankar seems to know an awful lot about me too, I suppose you
You're
could
not the
contact
only
him.
one
No.
there, Joy.
Back to the plot, Shankar. Thank you so much.
All right.
See, this is the kind of man that Shankar Poncelet is. Generous, and I think generosity in business is a beautiful thing, and humility in business is a beautiful thing. And Shankar, if I could blush a little bit more, I would blush. So I'm thinking, why is he turning the tables on me? But what you just did there, I want to say, made me feel very special, made me feel very understood, and yeah, I felt good. I had a good
Ah,
feeling, Shankar.
thank
Thank you
you.
for that.
You're so very
So I'm
welcome.
going to turn the tables back to you and
Okay.
talk to you about the way in which your business is progressing, because you have been working a lot in the medical field, medical practitioners.
Yes.
I know it's IT, I know it's technical stuff, I know it's websites, I know it's public relations, but you have a huge concern for this particular group of people, and I just wondered where that's coming from.
Yeah, it's because as I grew my business, I started seeing that the whole package that I am works very nicely in the healthcare field. It is people always say you gotta define your niche, but I tell them the niche finds you. You just have to be a little bit of patient and be observant and see signals. So I saw that, and I uh, I tapped into something that is called free market principles applied to healthcare in the United States, and I decided to become very involved with it. I decided to help companies and individuals who operate within that model of healthcare delivery in the United States. I decided to focus on serving them. That is primarily what my agency does.
You care about human beings, and I think
Yep.
around the world, self-care is important, but when you have to pay for it and you possibly can't afford it, or you've paid a certain amount but it still doesn't cover you, yeah, we're looking at mortality, how long a human being's going to live for. And people who can afford it do have a longer life. And I can even vouch for it for Queen Elizabeth, who unfortunately passed away. She lived a long, healthy life, and her mother lived a long, healthy life, and so
Mhm.
did the Queen's husband. And that's because they were afforded the best care and attention when they needed it. So I think that's really good. And you're just encouraging a lot of these practitioners to step outside of their comfort zone a bit and be a bit more visible,
Yes.
attract the people that they need to attract, but also to stop hiding perhaps behind their desk. You know, people need them. People
Yes.
need them to turn up and show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fabulous. Well, Shankar, we've got about 5 minutes left. So I told you I would surprise you with something. One of my first
Okay.
surprises for you, of course, is, of course, everybody might not be aware of who this person is. I bring it a little bit close to the camera. Do you see any resemblance to anyone notice the resemblance there?
It looks
Yes.
like I still look the same.
This handsome young man is Shankar. That's a picture of Shankar when he was in law enforcement.
Mhm.
How old are you in that picture, by the way?
Oh, that must have been in 2004.
2004.
Yep.
So you're one of these people, not going to tell me your age. You're behaving like a woman, Shankar. Stop it.
No, I just
Anyway, 2004. You don't have to tell me your age. I mean,
I was 22.
22.
Yep.
Young 22-year-old. Just quickly for you, those of you who didn't quite see that. That is Shankar at the age of 22. Amazing. He's hardly changed. Yes, he's hardly changed. Right, Shankar, I wanted to also ask you a couple of quick questions about Luxembourg, just to make sure that you definitely come from that country, because I think you might have been pulling some porcupines on me, as we say in the UK. But let's have a quick look here. Right, what is the capital of Luxembourg?
It's also called Luxembourg, and most people refer to it as Luxembourg City.
Absolutely right. Absolutely what I've got written down here. Next question. Which river flows through Luxembourg City?
Through the
Begins with
Sur.
an A. Begins with an A.
Oh, Alzette.
How's that? Good. Nice one. There we go. And I also want to ask you one which you have to know this one. What is the traditional, it says Lamborghese dish that's made from spiced meat and beans called in your language?
It's called Jut mat garde bonen.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said that better myself. And apparently it's a smoked collar of pork with broad beans. This is making me hungry because I've not eaten yet. And the last question, which I don't think you're going to have an answer to. Luxembourg is part of Europe, and we have something called the Eurovision Song Contest, which you'll know of, Shankar. Americans might not know.
Mhm.
And Luxembourg
It's a
won
big
it quite a
deal.
few times. Now, would you remember won it 5 times apparently? That's probably more than the UK has. Do you remember any of the singers? Did they become national heroes in your country, or any names?
Oh
You
gosh.
might not remember any. You might not even have watched it.
I don't. You know why? Because very often Luxembourg adopts people from all over Europe and lends them their citizenship for these things because it's such a melting pot. But I don't remember. No.
And that's also written down as well, that these people that won, they're not even Luxembourgy citizens. I've just made that one up,
Luxemburger.
Shankar. Yeah, Luxemburgers.
Yes, that's how.
Luxembourg, like a hamburger.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. I think Shankar's trying to pull my leg, but I'm just going to say yes. Now, Shankar, before we close, 2 minutes to go, okay? Now, you've got to just tell me, I don't know, one or two things that any potential business owners would want to know in terms of what they should do first to start getting on the entrepreneurial ladder.
They should start growing an audience, preferably on LinkedIn, so that when they are ready to really mass distribute their ideas, attract attention to their business, they have an audience to talk to. Is one of the first things. You need to have an offer and an audience, otherwise there's no business.
That is a good advice there. Good advice.
Yeah.
And Shankar, emotional intelligence. I know that it's a very important thing for you. In fact, it's been something that's run through you through, I was going to say run through like a stick of Candy Rock. In the UK, we have Candy Rock and we have the writing through it, and we say it runs through you like a stick of candy rock from beginning to end. So that's just emotional intelligence, whatever word you want to use, that's been a part of your life. It's had a big influence on everything that you're doing and continues to have an influence on what you're doing. And if you can just let everybody know how they can contact you. I know I just had the ticker tape going, but if you remind people where they can get hold of you, because you're doing some new projects as well.
Yeah, I have the pleasure of collaborating with a common mentor that we have, Sinead Moray, and we do this LinkedIn challenge. You can see it in the ticker, ugrow.club. and the next version starts on July 11th, is absolutely free, no strings attached. So I would just say that that's a great way to start collaborating with me, because I will be giving you feedback on your work there.
Excellent. And I've got someone who's made a comment. Okay. This is Andrea Ferguson says, what do you call a Luxembourger who immigrates to Texas? The answer is a Texas burger.
Yeah,
That's the perfect note to end on, because we are literally on time, top of the hour. And I love that. I love that. That made me laugh. I shouldn't laugh at it, should I? But it was very funny. So thank you everyone for dropping by and hearing what Shankar Poncelet has to say about becoming a millionaire. You know, regardless of how much money you end up making, you're still just in business, you're still doing things that you love, and you can hear the deep passion behind Shankar and his dreams and his motivations and his intentions. I've never met such an intentionally driven person, you know, so it's good to see it. It's good to know that it exists. And I think it's always good to have good role models in this world. And if people just want to contact you, Shankar, they can just DM. Can they connect with you? Are you open to connections? And
find me on LinkedIn or Google my name. There's 4 pages worth of me on Google, so you'll have your choice there. But find me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and send me a message.
excellent. And the same goes for me too. You know, you can find me on LinkedIn. So connect with either of us, Shankar Poncelet or Joy Langley on LinkedIn. And Shankar gave me a lovely plug there, gave me a chance to publicize my workshop that's coming up in July. So contact me, DM me if you want to find out more information. That's the generosity of this gentleman. And on that happy note, I want to wish you all a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And join me again. More special guests, more fun. You know, wherever I go, it's always sunshine. And Shankar, thank you for being such a good sport and putting up with me teasing you.
Can I say, Joy, this was the best interview I've ever gone through. You are just such a master at doing this. Thank you for taking the time to prepare for your interviews like this. It really makes me feel very valued.
Oh, I appreciate that, Shankar. And on that happy note, with our mutual admiration society going on, we'll catch up with you very soon. So we'll have to get Shankar to come back and share some more of his secrets, because there's an awful lot more that we have not spoken about. But that's part 2.
All
So I'll
right.
see you all. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Catch up with you all soon.
Bye.